Maganimation, Episode 2, Make Animation Great Again. This is Randy, and I'm here with Dylan.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, this episode, we're here to talk about Ren and Stimpy. The first episode, Dylan was actually on with me talking about Samurai Jack, but his audio did not come through, so I had to cut it out of that first episode. But he will be with me in these future episodes. This is supposed to be a two-guy show. But we both, I think it's safe to say that early on in our friendship, we talked about Ren and Stimpy, and our love for it. And I particularly liked getting along with you on it because not only did you like Ren and Stimpy like I did, you understood Ren and Stimpy, I think, in a similar way that I did. In the way that you liked it, I really appreciated.
Right.
Because I think you understood that it was a vision of John Kay, and you were impressed with that vision as much as you were as it just being a really funny, entertaining show. And a lot of those shows from that time, like Rugrats and Doug, I really like. But I think Ren and Stimpy's aged the best. I think it's really timeless in a Looney Tunes type way. What was do you remember your first experience with Ren and Stimpy?
Powdered Toast Man.
Yeah.
That took me by storm. I loved the chants. I just love everything about the idea of the guy, and he's such a small character in the show. I know it's random and stuff. But no, what took me by storm was just really, like anybody else when they're a kid and they're watching some offbeat, weird humor like that. It's just how graphic it can be and how step up from Looney Tunes it was, and it really followed in the footsteps of Looney Tunes. So it's easily accessible to adults as well as kids around that time.
Well, I'd say Tex Avery, too. It's got a lot of Tex Avery. And the thing about John Kay is he worked with Ralph Bashki in the early 80s and had a bad experience with him. They actually had a film they were working on that never got made, although I would have loved to have seen that. Because he definitely has the same kind of, the cynicism and craziness of Ralph Bashki. He's very adult, but he found a way to be a little bit more mainstream. But I think what we like about Ren and Stimpy is it goes to that underground comic book feel that we both love, like Fritz the Cat or something. And
It's not...
Keep going.
It's not afraid to push the barrier, to make people feel a little gaggy or grossed out and whatnot, which is always great to have in the show.
Well, I think there's episodes now that generally gross me out. There's a couple that come to mind that I just think about scenes where it's like, God, I close my eyes watching those moments. They're so gross.
Yeah, like I remember the one clip you showed me when they go back and they meet the cartoonist, Stimpy's idol of a cartoonist when he makes his own, Stimpy's own cartoon. Everybody knows that one.
Yeah.
And stuff. And then the earwax comes out of his ear, and then he reaches up and he has a thong on. It's just the graphic images that are clearly influenced SpongeBob when they do the up close shots of the really painted visuals.
Oh, you're right. Those close up shots are straight up later in SpongeBob. Those insanely detailed shots in Ren and Stimpy.
Directly taken from the show, just to hyperbolize. Is that a word? I don't know. Just the features in order to create that sense of grossness and intensity that make the show extra funny.
No, I know what you mean. Well, it's got this comic book exaggeration about it because I know John Kay, he said specifically to the animators he didn't want them to draw the same facial expression twice. He didn't like that, which is very tough to do. And his idea was, he said that with animation there's no reason to do normal faces, so he went out of his way to draw weird smiles and you got to think about The Simpsons and these other shows. They used a simplistic drawing style to make things work, but with Ren and Stimpy, which had a big budget, a $6 million an episode budget, which was huge, and it was the first show, according to John Kay, it was the first show from what I know that had a completely animated team working on it. They were the producers, the writers, the directors. And John Kay was the voice of Ren, and Billy West, who voices Philip J. Fry, Doug Funny. The list, he was Shaggy and Scooby-Doo on Zombie. Billy West I think he's been Bugs Bunny a few times. He came in, and it was a great duo. I think it's probably the two of the funniest voices and characters to play off each other in comedy history. I think, because the idea John Kay had was make the characters funny, and you could put them in any situation, and then it's funny. And I think that rule holds true for Ren and Stimpy because, at least in the first two seasons when John Kay's running the show, I don't think there's a bad episode in the bunch.
No, it's just flawless.
Well,
seamless even. This guy, he stayed at home because he's been moving around from Canada back and forth because his dad was in the Air Force. Their Air Force, whatever, and ended up back in Germany and stuff. So he skipped school seasons and whatnot, and so he was home a lot. So he just watched Looney Tunes all day and draw Looney Tunes cartoons, and you could see that influence clearly, just by how the seamless animation works and everything. And that's how he wanted it to be designed, like Hanna-Barbera cartoons and Looney Tunes. and those things which are being still studied today by animators.
Well, specifically Looney Tunes, especially with the movement, because Hanna-Barbera uses a lot of the same backgrounds. But he seemed to, I don't know. I think he's still one of the most original visions we had. I still, we talked about Gady Tartakovsky last time. I think about John Kay's artwork, and I think about the Ripping Friends because I watched that show, and he actually had he actually worked on other stuff. But you just immediately see the faces like this, that like a Brad Bird thing. You see the way he draws characters, like, oh, that's John Kay, and it influenced Cow and Chicken. It influenced SpongeBob. I think it was early in that kind of meme humor too, like exaggerated reaction
Right.
for the humor, and it was coming from a time in the 80s when animation pretty much had gone to shit. So Ren and Stimpy was a big deal for animation geeks in the 90s. Like, I don't think this was like an Akira moment really for people.
Yeah, I mean, and it also came out alongside like Doug and Rugrats, which were like the triarchy of the Nickelodeon forefront of cartoons, which actually set like the standard of cartoons later on. I think we already talked.
Well, on Wikipedia, I think it says that it was at one point it was like the highest rated show on cable, which is pretty crazy that an animated show was the highest rated. So that means at one point everybody was watching Ren and Stimpy, and Spumco was the company that John Kay started, and I don't know what eventually happened with the company, but it was. If you don't know what happened, basically Ren and Stimpy was a huge hit. It was the highest rated thing. They were going to make movie deals. It probably would have been on 10 seasons. I mean, it was really, and there was a lack of merchandise. That's some people don't know. There wasn't actually a lot of merchandise early on in Ren and Stimpy. And then Nickelodeon wanted to make changes, and John Kay kept fighting with them, and he only talked to them through lawyers. Then they fired him. He walked with everyone, and they all stayed fired while Billy West stayed on and then voiced Ren and Stimpy. A new animation studio came in and took over the show, and it stayed on for 3 more seasons without John Kay. That's pretty much one of the most devastating stories in animation history, I feel. It's basically like if Bruce Timm and Paul Dini would have been fired off Batman the Animated Series.
Right, and Howard Stern had to exploit it.
Yeah, we got to talk about this. If there's this famous Howard Stern interview, and I'll put a link in the description so you can watch it, because it's like an hour. It is Howard Stern, one of his worst moments, I'd say. It is one of the most asshole things Howard Stern's ever done. It's
what made me stop caring about Howard Stern as a person. Like, it bothered me that much what he did to John Kricfalusi. It was pretty much embarrassing and cruel. Like,
the thing is, now I realize with Howard Stern, and I know it's good radio, I hate now watching a show in retrospect that it really was. He would just put people in uncomfortable confrontations, then he would backpedal when it came back on him and deny any kind of problem with it. He basically just gives people shit, which I don't mind. He's yelling at Gary, his producer. What I don't like is that he has Billy West working on the show, and then he brings John Kay on there for a fucking interview and like a setup with Billy West, and then he has this awkward interview where he's trying to get John Kay and Billy West to argue, because you could tell John Kay is pissed at Billy West, and it's not even
Howard
subtle.
Stern.
And Howard Stern. Well, you can tell he's pissed by the whole setup that he had him on. Instead of interviewing him, he sets him up for like this dramatic confrontation.
And after about 40 minutes of the interview, then he puts him on the spot with what he's working on now. And what I think was a good idea, and I like the character, was the George Liquor character from Ren and Stimpy. We all know when they did that episode, the very dark episode of the domestic abuse and whatnot.
Yeah.
But anyway, when he had the pets, and then he was up there, he was advertising, and he had this puppet for George Liquor trying to advertise and everything. And it was just cringeworthy, and it's about 15 minutes of just cringe. Like, of watching John Kay at his lowest, trying to do what he can to make what he wants to make, you know?
Well, I think he had either a breakdown or he's one of those geniuses that was only good for all. But I think after a certain point with Ren and Stimpy, I don't know if losing the show just completely defeated him, that he had a hard time recovering from it creatively. Although I still really like the Ripping Friends. I used to watch that on Fox Kids. And he did the first, some people don't know, John Kay did the first piece of animation for the internet exclusively, I think.
Yeah, and it's called the Goddamn George Liquor Show.
Yeah.
Which is why I brought up the George Liquor bit from the interview. It's relevant, guys.
But it's so weird because it's Billy West sitting there awkwardly, like not saying anything, and Howard Stern keeps going, "Come on, John Kay, now Billy ripped you up." And never wrong, John Kay says some powerful things in this interview. It's why I'm watching.
He does not look bad at all. It's just the atmosphere and Howard Stern being the dick that he is just makes him look bad.
Well, you could tell Stern's not interested in on hearing about John Kay. He's just about this drama is what he wants to focus on the entire.
I think he has an issue seeing anybody with talent.
I agree to a certain level. I agree that he doesn't like that kind of artistry because John Kay is such an individual artist. But the thing is, he said some powerful stuff that because of what Billy West did, that killed creative animation for 10 years. It killed the money they could have made. He said we would have made movies, and it would have. That style that Ren and Stimpy created, I think that company, Splumco, they were going to be huge.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't being egotistical. He wasn't being a megalomaniac. He was saying that that's the standard. I mean, that's the best way to do it, I think. Is just to have that seamless, crazy animation, that slapstick humor, just offbeat, nothing about modern topics, just weird, funny humor for kids and adults.
Well, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, well, also SpongeBob showed the proof because SpongeBob's been on now for like 15, 16 years and had 2 hit movies, and that could have been Ren and Stimpy.
And it just ended recently.
Yeah. And John Kay saw that. See, that's a guy with vision. He didn't see 5 years ahead. He saw 20 years ahead.
Exactly.
And Billy West was a voice actor that got a paycheck. And I'm not really knocking Billy West. I get, on some level, he got offered probably a shitload of money, and he just said, fuck it, I'm going to take the money.
And not to knock on him, but he's really talented. I mean,
he's one of my favorite voice actors of all time.
Hey, Ren!
Yeah. Hey, Ren!
Like, it's amazing. Don't get me wrong.
No,
it's just...
No, I mean, Fry and the Professor and...
but money's money, and that's how business works. I get it. It's just shitty that it had to happen, that it happened to John Craig Calusi.
Well, also the fact that it makes you realize that what Ren and Stimpy could have been and what John Kay's career could have been. Like, did Billy West taking that money just really did Nickelodeon just ruin an artist with John Kay? Like, because think about it, Rugrats get to go on forever with Klatchky Chabot and all that stuff. John Kay, he never really got that spotlight again after Ren and Stimpy.
Remember, this is one of the original Nickelodeon cartoons.
Yeah, helped kick off the network from being these like Canadian shows that were like these weird Canadian shows and actually doing their own original animated shows that just took over. And now Ren and Stimpy's like critically acclaimed. It's got, I mean, he took 3 different pilots to the network, and Ren and Stimpy were just characters in one of the things he was working on, and the producers liked it so much they told him to do it. And he had all these weird influences for voice and for movies and characters, and it's really just one of those perfect things. He kind of came up with a modern Tom and Jerry. He really came out with a modern Wile E. Coyote, Roadrunner. Like, I think Ren and Stimpy, especially in the 90s context, before a Cartoon Network era took over, I think Ren and Stimpy's really the most iconic duo in cartoons from that time. Mm-hmm. And in the same way that Bruce Timm and Paul Dini's work led on to the Justice League Unlimited and Young Justice and all this stuff, I think John Kay could have produced a lot of different content that would have been just as good as Ren and Stimpy. But it's funny. This ended up being such a tragic... not a celebration of Ren and Stimpy, which it really should be.
Honestly, if you're a really big Ren and Stimpy fan, and if you haven't seen the interview, I mean, I've seen it, so you must be living under a rock. But if you haven't seen it, I urge you to watch it because it really is a powerful interview, and it'll make you hate Howard Stern for a bit, if not forever.
Yeah, it's one of his lowest moments, but the I don't know, the spirit, the character that John Kay shows in there, the integrity, very impressive. I actually I definitely think, because now I think the guy I read about him, he's like a wacko on Twitter and he just tries to fuck young girls, although, hey, why not,
Howard Stern.
Yeah. But the thing with it is that to celebrate Ren and Stimpy, every episode is just a ball of energy, and with time I get overwhelmed by it. You get that opening with that jazz score that's so immediate and awesome, and it's classic. You were talking to me earlier, like, it's just classic. It puts you in this classic mood.
I mean, it takes you back to, this is a show, the curtains are pulling apart, the ragtime, everybody, they bring in the jazz quartet and everyone's like, and then here's the big entertainment for tonight, and it's Ren and Stimpy, and then you're still questioning reality at that point.
Well, that is the funny thing, is that it's this weird fever dream surrealist adult cartoon mixed with Looney Tunes, and then this almost jazzy classic comic loungy feel about it. That's a really good way to talk about it. It has that feel, like smoke in a room type feeling, smoke in a bar,
For me, it just feels like, the Looney Tunes rejects. That didn't make it on the Looney Tunes or something like that. So it's just, this is what we could have been on there. Aren't you glad it's not on there?
My favorite episode, I think it's called, I can't remember the name, I think it's called A Yard to Wander. It's the one with the baboon.
Oh, gee, they don't have a dog, Ren, but they have a baboon.
I've watched that episode every year for the last few years. I think that's I'm not. I think I got the name wrong. It's like A Yard Too Far or something like that. But
yeah, I remember I watched it with you one night after
on
the
VHS.
bar.
We watched it on a VHS tape one night.
It was old school.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I think every joke in that episode is just fucking insanely on point.
It is a crazy episode.
Yeah, well, it tricks you because it has just this weird, funny situation, and then the situation gets more ridiculous as it goes on, which is typical Ren and Stimpy. But I don't know if it's kind of like him remaking the dog beating up Tom and Jerry and stuff like that, and him doing it today, but with like these really, I mean, like there's some one point Ren he has his skin ripped off.
Oh yeah,
and it's just that's something only John Kay was doing. That's crazy shit.
And also,
skin off.
Back to what you said about Tom and Jerry with the dog and whatnot. It's just the common comedic element of displacement where they take out the norm of the dog and it's a freaking baboon that makes no sense whatsoever.
That's the thing. Why do they have a pet baboon? Because he asks him, he's like, "Do they have a dog?" And he's like, "No."
His family, just like you question what the face of Tom's owner looks like. You question who the hell this family is that owns a fucking baboon.
That's the thing. In a universe of talking chihuahuas and cats, the humans are scarier than the talking chihuahua and cat. Like, it's not
again George Liquor.
Yeah, no.
Powdered Toast Man. What are you gonna do in that world?
No, just the smiles on the people's faces and some things are so scary. In Ren and Stimpy, but then so hilarious. It makes you feel weird, and that's why you laugh. It's almost uncomfortable laughter.
And he also he does say a couple comments about like the girls he draws in the show, and he does draw these weird Disney anime looking girls.
Yeah.
And he's like, he made a point. He's like, well, why Disney can draw pretty girls? Why can't Nickelodeon have pretty girls? You know what I mean?
Oh no, what I liked is that he always had a lot of sexuality under the surface, which did get ruined later on the Spike adult Ren and Stimpy show, where like the sex stuff was just.
Well, that was a time. That was a time when South Park was thriving, so they were pushing for the toilet humor because Spike didn't understand South Park and that
agree.
it was a satire.
That's everything about Stripperella.
Yeah, and they lost the momentum that the show had. John Kay had no gas for the show anymore. It was fucked. Like, he couldn't just do it.
Well, it's funny. You go back
and it had no pacing.
You go back and look at his career. He actually, his first breakout was he worked on a remake of Mighty Mouse in the 80s that was very acclaimed. And so I want to go back and find that. I think I've seen a couple episodes of that 80s Mighty Mouse, but I'd like to go back and find that. He's someone I wish would have gotten to make a movie like Brad Bird did with Iron John. I would really like to have seen a John Kay animated film. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. It would have been amazing.
Yeah.
It would have been another Fritz the Cat. It really would have been a Marvel cult classic, like, beloved by many people under the surface.
Why didn't Seth Rogen and them go get him to direct Sausage Party? That would have been on.
Because they're fucking stupid.
Seriously, think about that. John Kay, if he directed. Like, seriously, like, somebody get John Kay back. This episode, let's get to other. I don't care. DreamWorks, Pixar, whatever the fuck are you. Get John Kay, give him a job.
Somebody.
Hire him.
For Christ's sake.
Give this crazy bastard a job. Give him work.
No, there's not many John Kays in the world, and artists like this don't come around often.
That's the thing. I can't compare him to many people. I could see influences, but he is original in his own way. Totally.
And he aims to be original. He doesn't try to be like anyone else. What he does, he pays homage to his influences, but other than that, he is John Kay. Everyone knows John Kricfalusi. As we said earlier in the episode, he has his own style that he changed from something he loved.
I think in the same way that we're going to talk about a lot of shows and things over this series that we love and that affect us emotionally. It's funny, Ren and Stimpy doesn't affect me emotionally like say Samurai Jack does, but it's the how it inspires me to be more creative and be better is something that's really rare in art. It inspires me. Ren and Stimpy challenges me to try to live in a more creative world. And John Kay's vision, I think, isn't going to go anywhere soon because we're still seeing people try to catch up. I think.
Right.
Do you have any final thoughts? Do you have any final things you want to say? Like, if you had to say one final thing about Ren and Stimpy to really, just like concisely put it down, what do you think is the key to it? What do you think's the key to you that really makes it shine?
What makes Ren and Stimpy shine? What's its charm?
Yeah, what's its main charm? What's that thing that really pops for you? You think?
Like just the simplicity, the formula. It's this the dynamic duo, the classic archetype for any, successful show, and they're polar opposites of one another. It's just that simple, and they just end up doing stupid adventures. Anything can happen, and he took full advantage of that. He made anything capable happen to the point where Powdered Toast Man can just show up. You know what I mean?
So you would say he basically did, he stripped everything down to just like its base, like this is the simple character interaction.
The way it should be. Well,
and then he put all this stuff on top of it, all this creativity.
Like, let me talk about Adventure Time real quick.
Okay.
I mean, to me, I don't like that show at all, and I'll probably get some flack for that because it's just it's too convoluted. Like, you can have a show like Ren and Stimpy that has a mark on animation, you know what I mean, and its simplicity and its formula and whatnot, and yet it looks so complicated on the surface. But on the bottom of it all, just like Courage the Cowardly Dog, how it was successful. It was a simple formula. Something just happens to these guys. And, this is how I always looked at it.
Well, situational comedy,
exactly.
sitcom type humor, but at a high level, obviously not.
Yeah, in a whole in a John K way, of course. But that's what stood out to me with it in a way.
Well, I know what you mean. Well, less is more. And even though Ren and Stimpy has a lot to it, at the base of it, it's a pretty simple concept. It's really just this cat and this dog going around and doing random shit.
No matter how much heart you put into it, that's what it is. It's a slapstick comedy of these weird things wandering around.
And I guess for me, my thing that really stands out, I would just say at the end of the day, is happy, happy, joy, joy. And
of course you'd say that.
Well, the thing about it, I'll say this, is that the thing to me that makes it work, I think, is Ren's complete seriousness as a character that makes it really funny, and then Stimpy's complete obliviousness to Ren's hatred for him, I think.
And his naivety. You know what I mean?
I think that's really the key, is that he is naive to the fact that Ren hates him. He thinks they're best friends. And that Ren secretly does kind of love Stimpy, but it's more of the fact that Ren kind of hates everyone, including himself, I think. And I think that's John K in a way. And I think it's a reflection of him. I think Ren very much is John K and a lot of his feelings on the things. And I think Billy West being there like this annoying voice in his ear, I think that's very intentional, them playing off each other. It's Cheech and Chong, it's, Wayne and Garth, it's that kind of great dynamic. It can't be done again. You'll never see, because those two had a chemistry, because I think there was probably a tension there. Maybe they fucked, I don't know. That'd be an interesting twist.
I'd fuck John K.
Oh, yeah, of course. Especially in the day. He's very good looking on that Stern interview.
And his name is Jonathan Crick Falusi, if anybody's wondering what the K means.
Yeah, a lot of people just say that as an abbreviation because he has a weird last name. But it's not like I'm just doing that. People do that all the time, obviously. But I guess, this has gone on a while, but thank you for watching. Please watch the next episode of Maganimation. We're not quite sure we're going to yet. Put a request in the comments if you want us to look at a certain show.
I believe someone offered up an idea of Kagemushu. I can't remember if I pronounced it right, which is something I might be interested in doing.
Oh, that's a live action film.
Ooh.
Yeah, Akira Kurosawa.
Then that guy doesn't get the premise.
Yeah. No, I think what he was saying is there was something in that related to Samurai Jack Season 5.
Alrighty,
But yeah, put requests in for us, because we'd like to, do something you guys want, and tell us what you feel about Ren and Stimpy. What's your favorite episode? And to let everyone know, John K did go on and do work. He just, not really anything now, but it's not like his whole career is a failure. He's going to go down as like someone who made a really famous show.
Yeah. He didn't fall into the bowels of obscurity. No,
and you never know. You never know. There might be a comeback one day. It's possible. Unlikely, but possible. And, maybe with something like Sausage Party, which I was hoping was going to be like Ren and Stimpy, and it disappointed me. I do hope that movie did well. The door's open now for this kind of thing to make a comeback, and I do think it can. And maybe even something like BoJack Horseman's a step in the right direction. Or even Rick and Morty. I think all those things exist in a world that Ren and Stimpy helped create. The insane universes of animation that didn't quite exist before the 90s. But I appreciate everyone watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. This is Randy.
And this is Dylan. This is Maganimation.
Make animation great again.
Great again.
Yeah.
Was that in sync?
It was kind of, you were a little Justin and I was a little Lance Bass, but close enough.
Good enough. Whatever. It's a YouTube video.